If you have ever found yourself standing in your kitchen at 3 a.m., reorganizing the spice rack by color and wondering, am I just really productive right now, or is something else happening? Then you are in the exact right video. Spotting the line between hypomania and mania is one of the hardest skills to learn, but it is also the most critical. It is the difference between needing to slow down for a few days versus needing urgent medical safety. Think of it like a car on the highway. Hypomania is driving 20 miles over the speed limit. You are going fast, it feels thrilling, but you can probably still steer. Mania is driving 100 miles an hour with the brake lines cut. In the next few minutes, I am going to give you 3 clear checkpoints: sleep, speed, and risk, that will act as your speedometer. We are going to translate the medical definitions into real-life scenarios, and by the end, I will give you a specific 3-line worksheet you can use to catch these shifts before they catch you. I'm Clara, your guide at Bipolar Clarity. Let's take a breath and make this simple. Before we dive into the toolkit, I need to remind you that I am a passionate educator, not a doctor. This video is for educational purposes and is not medical advice. Always consult with your local healthcare professionals for your specific needs. To understand why your brain shifts into these gears, we have to look at the biology for a moment. Bipolar disorder is often described as a problem with the brake system in the brain. Inside your brain, you have a system that regulates drive, reward, and energy. It is largely fueled by a chemical called dopamine. In a neurotypical brain, when you get a good idea, you get a little squirt of dopamine. You feel good, you do the task, and then the system cools down. In a bipolar brain, the cool down mechanism can glitch. This is often tied to your circadian rhythm, your internal body clock. When that clock gets disrupted, maybe by stress, a time zone change, or a few nights of bad sleep, the dopamine system can get stuck in the on position. It keeps flooding the engine with fuel. This brings us to the core distinction. Hypomania is when the engine is revving high, but the wheels are still on the road. Mania is when the engine revving becomes so intense that the car lifts off the ground and you lose contact with reality. Let's break this down using our 3 checkpoints. Checkpoint number 1 is the sleep disconnect. I put this first because it is the single most reliable signal for 90% of people. But you have to listen to the type of sleep problem. In depression or anxiety, you might have insomnia. You stare at the ceiling, wishing you could sleep, feeling tired and miserable. In hypomania and mania, the script flips. You don't sleep, but you don't feel like you need to. You wake up after 3 hours and think, wow, I am fully recharged. Here is the difference in intensity. In hypomania, sleep shrinks. You might go from 8 hours to 5 hours. You function well, perhaps even better than usual. You feel like you have discovered a life hack where you just need less rest than other mortals. In mania, sleep can almost disappear. You might go 48 hours with 0 sleep and still feel energetic. The biological lie your brain tells you becomes much louder. In mania, the very idea of sleep feels like a waste of time, or even annoying. If someone suggests you take a nap, you might feel offended. Here is a tiny experiment to try if you're unsure where you stand. Tonight, try to lie in a dark room for 30 minutes with no phone. If you feel bored but calm, you're likely okay. If you feel a physical vibration in your chest, or if your thoughts are screaming at you to get up and do something because lying down feels physically painful, that is a red flag. That is your nervous system running hot. Checkpoint number 2 is speed. We are talking about the speed of your thoughts and your speech. Clinicians call this pressured speech. In hypomania, you are the life of the party. You are witty, you are cracking jokes, and you are telling stories better than ever. You might dominate the conversation, but if your friend interrupts you, you can stop. You can listen. You might type long emails, but they still make sense. In mania, the speed breaks the sound barrier. Your thoughts are moving so fast that your mouth cannot keep up. You might start a sentence about your job, switch to a story about your childhood, and end with a fact about space travel, all in 10 seconds. This is called flight of ideas. Crucially, in mania, it becomes hard to listen. If someone tries to interrupt you, it feels like they are physically blocking you. You might get unusually irritable or angry because people seem too slow. Here is a quick pattern interrupt. Most people think mania always feels happy. That is a myth. For many, mania feels like agitation. It feels like you have 10 televisions on in your head at full volume and you cannot find the remote. If you feel crawling out of your skin irritable, that can be a high energy symptom too. Checkpoint number 3 is risk and consequence. This is often where the clinical line is drawn between bipolar 2, hypomania, and bipolar 1, mania. It comes down to the brakes. In your brain, the frontal lobe is responsible for judgment, predicting consequences, and impulse control. In hypomania, your frontal lobe is a little loose, but it is still working. You might spend $500 on a new hobby you don't need. You might get a tattoo on a whim. You might overshare with a coworker. It is risky, and you might regret it later, but it usually doesn't ruin your life. In mania, the frontal lobe essentially goes offline. The part of you that says, maybe this is a bad idea, stop speaking. This is where we see high-stakes risks. This looks like spending your entire life savings on a business idea you had this morning. It looks like driving 100 miles an hour because you feel like physics doesn't apply to you. It looks like sexual encounters with strangers without protection, or believing you have special powers. There is a specific term we need to discuss here called insight. Insight is your ability to look at yourself and say, I am acting strange. In hypomania, you often have some insight. You might say, I'm really wired today, or I need to calm down. In mania, insight usually vanishes. You feel like you are the only sane person in the world, and everyone else is boring, slow, or trying to hold you back. If your family tells you that they are worried, and your immediate reaction is that they are the problem, that is a major warning sign. Now, let's talk about a specific feature that only happens in mania: psychosis. If your up mood ever includes seeing things others don't see, hearing voices, or believing things that are logically impossible, like believing you are a government agent or that you have been chosen by God to save the world, that is automatically classified as mania. Hypomania does not include psychosis. If you lose touch with reality, even for a moment, that is a signal to get immediate help. Speaking of help, I want to pause for a serious moment regarding safety. Mania can make you feel invincible, which is dangerous. If you notice you are feeling sure you cannot be harmed, or if you feel a magnetic pull toward dangerous situations, you need to involve your care team immediately. If you are ever in a state where you feel out of control, or if you are having thoughts of harming yourself or others, please call or text 988 in the US and Canada to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you are elsewhere, please call your local emergency services. You are not bad for having these symptoms. You are having a medical emergency, and you deserve care. Now, that explains the what, but the how is where it gets practical. How do you actually manage this in the real world? I want to give you 3 specific tools to put in your pocket. Tool number 1 is the 48-hour rule. When you are in a high-energy state, Your brain will scream, I have to do this now. I have to buy the plane ticket now. I have to send the angry email now. Your job is to introduce friction. Make a deal with yourself when you are stable. I will not make any purchase over $100 or send any life-changing communication without a 48-hour waiting period. Write the email, save it to drafts. If it is still a brilliant idea in 2 days, send it then. 90% of the time, the urgency will fade, and you will be so glad you didn't hit send. Tool number 2 is the trusted validator. It is very hard to see the label from inside the bottle. You need a mirror. Find one person, a partner, a sibling, a best friend, and give them permission to be your mirror. Here is a script you can say to them. I am learning to spot my patterns. If you notice that I am talking much faster than usual, or that I haven't slept, will you gently point it out? I promise I will try not to get mad. I just need the data. Then, if they say, hey, you're vibrating, have you slept? Your job is not to argue. Your job is to say, thank you for the data, and go check your checkpoints. Tool number 3 is the anchor routine. When your internal clock is spinning, you have to manually grab the steering wheel. The most effective anchor is dark therapy. If you are feeling up, you need to reduce stimulation. From 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., try to keep your environment dark and quiet. Even if you cannot sleep, do not get up and clean the garage. Do not open your laptop. Listen to a boring audiobook. Lay in the dark. You are signaling to your ancient brain that it is nighttime. This can prevent hypomania from escalating into mania. Let's apply this to work and relationships, because that is where the damage often happens. At work, hypomania can feel like a superpower. You are clearing your inbox, you are volunteering for committees, but be careful. The future you has to actually do all the work you are promising to do today. A good rule for work. If you are in a high energy period, never say yes in the room. Always say, let me check my capacity and get back to you tomorrow. This buys you the time for your judgment to catch up with your enthusiasm. In relationships, the up state can lead to a lot of conflict because you might be more impulsive or argumentative. A tiny tip: set a rule that you do not have deep talks after 9 p.m. Nothing good happens in a relationship discussion when you are wired and tired. Save the big talks for the morning light. Let's open a loop that I want to close with a worksheet. You might be thinking, this sounds exhausting to track. It doesn't have to be. You don't need a complex app, you just need a sticky note. I promised you a 3-line worksheet. Here is how you do it. Get a piece of paper and write My Radar at the top. Line 1, write down your sleep tell. Example, waking up at 4 a.m. ready to run. Line 2, write down your speed tell. Example, interrupting people constantly. Line 3, write down your risk tell. Example, wanting to quit my job. Post this on your fridge or keep it in your phone notes. Check it once a week. If you see 2 of these 3 things happening, you don't need to panic. You just need to act. You need to initiate your dark therapy anchor and call your support person. Let's do a quick recap because we covered a lot of ground. Bipolar disorder is an issue with the brakes. Hypomania is speeding. Mania is losing control of the car. The 3 checkpoints are sleep. Do you need it? Speed. Can you stop talking? And risk. Is your frontal lobe online? Your safety tools are the 48-hour rule, the trusted validator, and the anchor routine. Here is your homework for this week. It is tiny. I want you to identify your trusted validator. Just pick the person. You don't even have to have the conversation yet. Just decide who it is. That is step one to building a safety net. I know tracking these signals, sleep, speed, and risk, can feel like a lot to keep in your head. If it helps, I send out a quiet weekly email that includes these specific checkpoints and one tiny doable step for the week. It is free, and it is there to help you spot the patterns without the overwhelm. You can find the link to join us in the description. If you are feeling scared by these descriptions, I want to offer you a different perspective. Knowing these signs is not a burden, it is power. Before you knew this, these moods just happened to you. Now you can see them coming. You are in the driver's seat. If this video helped you feel a little more in control, please subscribe. We are building a library of these practical guides to help you navigate life with bipolar disorder. For your next step, I highly recommend watching the video you see on your screen right now. It is a deep dive into bipolar 1 versus bipolar 2, which will help you place your own experiences into the bigger picture. Thanks for watching, and remember, steady is the goal.